I was 12 years old when I lost my parents, and 48 hours later, I gained a new father. Or so I thought. Martin Caldwell, my dad's best friend since college, stood at their funeral with his hand on my shoulder, promising me I'd never be alone. I believed him. I trusted him. And for 16 years, I called his house my home. But the day he got down on one knee and called me his future wife, I finally understood he hadn't saved me from being an orphan. He'd been grooming me to be his possession. Real-life inspired emotional stories from USA, Canada, UAE, and Europe, filled with truth, betrayal, love, and redemption. Each story touches the soul and reveals what really happens behind closed doors. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing to Golden Year Stories. It helps more people become aware of the reality of manipulation and control that can hide behind kindness. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Rebecca Morrison, but everyone calls me Becca. I'm 34 years old now, and I've spent the last 4 years learning how to be my own person. But to understand how far I've come, you need to know where I started. In a house in suburban Connecticut, with a man who saved me and then slowly tried to own me. The accident happened on a Tuesday in October. I was 12 years old, sitting in math class, when the principal came to get me. My parents, Mom and Dad, Sarah and Thomas Morrison, had been driving home from a weekend trip to Vermont when a semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel. They died instantly. That's what the police told me later, instantly. As if that word was supposed to make it hurt less. I had no siblings. My mom's parents had passed away before I was born, and my dad's mother lived in a nursing home with advanced dementia. There were some distant cousins in Oregon, people I'd met maybe twice at family reunions. And then there was Martin. Martin Caldwell had been my father's best friend since their freshman year at Yale. They'd been roommates, groomsmen at each other's weddings, the kind of friends who talked every week, even though they lived 3 hours apart. Martin was a commercial real estate attorney in Hartford, successful and respected. He'd never married, never had children. Married to my work. He'd joke at our family barbecues, while my dad would shake his head and tell him he didn't know what he was missing. When my parents died, Martin was the one who handled everything. He arranged the funeral, dealt with the lawyers, contacted my relatives in Oregon. And when the question came up about where I would go, Martin stepped forward without hesitation. Thomas was my brother in every way that mattered. He told the social worker assigned to my case. I was sitting right there in the room, numb and hollow, as they discussed my future like I was a piece of furniture that needed a new home. He'd want me to take care of Becca, and I want to. She shouldn't have to go live with strangers across the country when she's already lost everything. The Oregon cousins didn't fight it. They had 4 kids of their own and barely knew me. The social worker seemed relieved to have such a clean solution. A responsible adult with an established relationship to the family, stable income, a 4-bedroom house in a good school district. Within 6 weeks, the paperwork was finalized. Martin became my legal guardian. "You're going to be okay, Becca," he told me the day I moved into his house, carrying my suitcase up to what he called your new room. It had been his office before, but he'd cleared it out and bought new furniture. A white bed with a pink comforter, a desk, a bookshelf. Everything a 12-year-old girl might need. "I know this isn't the life you expected, but I'm going to take care of you. Your dad would want that, and I promise you'll always have a home with me." I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. Those first few years, Martin seemed like the answer to a prayer I hadn't known to say. He drove me to school every morning, helped me with my homework at night, made sure I ate regular meals even when grief made everything taste like cardboard. He took me to a therapist, Dr. Sandra Willis, a kind woman with grey hair who taught me breathing exercises and let me cry in her office every Tuesday afternoon. He was patient when I had nightmares and came downstairs at 2 in the morning, shaking and unable to breathe. He'd make me chamomile tea and sit with me until I calmed down. He never made me feel like a burden, never complained about how his life had changed to accommodate mine. "You're not a burden, Becca," he'd say whenever I apologized for being too much trouble. "You're family. And family takes care of each other." I clung to that word, family. Because without my parents, family was all I wanted. Looking back now, I can see when things started to shift. But at the time, everything felt so gradual, so natural, that I didn't recognize what was happening. It started with small comments. When I was 14 and wanted to go to a sleepover at my friend Jessica's house, Martin hesitated. "Are her parents going to be home?" he asked. "What time does it end? You know, Becca, I'm responsible for you. If something happened while you were there, I'd never forgive myself." I understood. Or I thought I did. He was being protective. He'd promised my dad he'd keep me safe. When I was 15 and got asked to the homecoming dance by a boy named Tyler Chen, Martin wanted to meet him first. Tyler came to the house, nervous and polite, while Martin asked him questions like a detective interviewing a suspect. Where would we be going? Who else would be there? What time would I be home? After Tyler left, Martin sat me down. "He seems like a nice enough kid," he said. "But Becca, you're young. You don't need to rush into dating. Boys your age, they're only worth more than that." I went to the dance, but Martin texted me every hour, just checking in. "Everything okay? Remember, I'm here if you need me." Tyler and I dated for 3 months. It was innocent, hand-holding in the hallways, sharing fries at lunch, one awkward kiss at the winter formal. But Martin always seemed uncomfortable when Tyler came up in conversation. He'd change the subject or remind me that I needed to focus on my grades, my future, not get distracted by some high school romance. When Tyler broke up with me in February, "You're great, Becca, but your guardian is kind of intense." Martin was sympathetic but not surprised. "He wasn't right for you anyway," Martin said. "You deserve someone mature. Someone who understands what you've been through." I was 16 by then, and I'd started to notice other things. The way Martin watched me when I came downstairs in the morning. The way he'd comment on my clothes. "Is that skirt a little short?" Or, "That shirt's pretty low cut, don't you think?" I'd change, embarrassed, thinking he was looking out for me. He monitored my phone. I didn't realize it at first because he'd given me the phone, set up the account, told me it was his responsibility to keep me safe online. But when my friend Maya texted me about a party and I deleted the message without responding, Martin brought it up at dinner. "Who's having a party?" he asked casually. I froze. "How did you?" "I check your messages sometimes, Becca, just to make sure you're not getting into anything dangerous." "You're not mad, are you?" "It's for your own good." I wasn't mad. I was embarrassed that I'd even considered going to the party. Martin was right. He was responsible for me. Of course he needed to know what I was doing. When I graduated high school, I'd been accepted to 3 colleges. University of Connecticut, Boston University, and a small liberal arts school in Massachusetts that had offered me a partial scholarship. I was excited, terrified, but excited. College meant freedom, meant finding out who I could be outside of grief and guardianship. But Martin sat me down the week after graduation with a serious expression. "Becca, we need to talk about money," he said. "I've been paying for everything, your food, your clothes, your therapy, this house, for 6 years now. Your parents' life insurance went into a trust for you, but it's not enough to cover college tuition and living expenses." My stomach dropped. "I have the scholarship." "Partial scholarship. That still leaves $40,000 a year to cover. And that's just tuition, Becca. That doesn't include room and board, books, food." "I could work. While taking a full course load, you'd burn out in a semester." He sighed, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I've been thinking, what if you stayed here and went to community college for 2 years? Save money, live at home, and then transfer to a 4-year school. It makes more sense financially. And honestly, I think you'd do better staying close to home. You've been through so much. You need stability." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that I'd been dreaming about Boston University for years, about living in a dorm and joining clubs, and figuring out who I was without someone watching my every move. But Martin had given up so much for me already. He'd turned his life upside down to raise me. And he was right. Money was tight. The trust from my parents wasn't infinite, so I stayed. I enrolled in community college. I got a part-time job at the library, and I lived in Martin's house in my pink bedroom, following his rules. "This is temporary," I told myself. "Just 2 years, and then I'll transfer." But 2 years turned into 4. Every time I mentioned transferring, Martin found a reason why it wasn't the right time. Money was tight. The economy was bad. Wouldn't it make more sense to finish my associate's degree first? Then think about what came next. By the time I was 22, I had a 2-year degree in general studies and no real plan. I'd applied to transfer programs, but somehow the applications always got lost or submitted late. Martin apologized each time. "I'm so sorry, Becca. I thought you'd mailed that already." But the pattern continued. I got a job as a receptionist at a dental office. The pay wasn't great, but it was something. I started saving money, thinking maybe I could get my own apartment. But Martin discouraged it. "Rent in this area is outrageous," he said. "You'd be throwing away money. Stay here, save up, and eventually you can buy your own place." That's the smart move. So I stayed. And the years slipped by. By the time I turned 28, I'd been living in Martin's house for 16 years. 16 years. More than half my life. The pink bedroom had been repainted a soft grey at some point, the furniture updated to match my adult tastes. But it was still his house. Still his rules. I was paying him rent now. Not much, he always insisted it was just to help with utilities. But somehow that made it worse. I was paying to live in a cage I couldn't even see. I worked at the dental office Monday through Friday, came home to make dinner with Martin most nights, and spent my weekends doing laundry, running errands, and occasionally meeting my friend Sarah, one of the few friends Martin seemed to tolerate, for coffee. My life had shrunk to the size of a routine, and I'd convinced myself that this was just what adulthood looked like: quiet, safe, small. Martin was 50 years old that year, still handsome in that distinguished way some men achieve with age. Silver at his temples, fine lines around his eyes, always dressed in pressed shirts even on weekends. People at church, yes, we went to church together every Sunday, would comment on what a devoted guardian he'd been, how lucky I was to have him. "He gave up everything for you," Mrs. Henderson from the parish council told me once after service. "Never married, never had his own family, just dedicated his life to raising you. That's real love, dear." I'd smiled and nodded, feeling that familiar mixture of gratitude and guilt that had become my constant companion. Martin had given up a lot. He reminded me of it, gently, whenever I seemed restless or dissatisfied. "I could have traveled more," he'd say, looking at a travel magazine someone had left in his office. "Could have taken that position in New York, but you needed stability, Becca, you needed a home. I don't regret it. I want you to know that. You were worth it." Worth it. As if I was an investment that needed to pay dividends. The comments had been getting stranger over the past few years, though I'd been trying not to notice. The way he'd say I looked beautiful before we went to church, his eyes lingering just a little too long. The way he'd rest his hand on my lower back when we walked together, a touch that felt less fatherly and more something else. When I was 26, I'd started dating a man named David who worked in IT for a local hospital. We'd met at a coffee shop, started talking about a book we'd both been reading, and exchanged numbers. For 3 months, it was wonderful. David was kind, funny, easy to be around. He made me feel like maybe there was a life outside Martin's house, outside that carefully controlled routine. But Martin hated him. "There's something off about that guy," he'd say whenever David picked me up for a date. "He's too smooth. Too charming." Men like that are usually hiding something. He'd wait up for me when I came home, sitting in the living room with a book, asking pointed questions. "Where did we go? What did we talk about? Did he try anything? I'm just looking out for you," he'd say when I got frustrated. "Your father would want me to make sure you're with someone who deserves you." David ended things after I cancelled our 3rd date in a row because Martin had suddenly needed my help with various household emergencies that seemed to materialize whenever I had plans. A leaking pipe that turned out to be fine. A concerning chest pain that disappeared by the time I got him to the ER. A fall down the stairs that left no bruises, no injuries, just Martin looking sheepish and apologizing for worrying me. "I can't compete with that," David said when he broke up with me over the phone. "I understand he raised you, Becca, but you're 26 years old. At some point, you have to live your own life." I cried in my room that night, and Martin brought me tea and sat on the edge of my bed, stroking my hair like I was still 12 years old. "He wasn't right for you anyway," Martin murmured. "You need someone who understands what we have, what we are to each other, what we are to each other." The phrase made my skin prickle, but I pushed the feeling away. Everything changed when I met Alina Martinez. It was March, and I'd taken a second part, part-time job at a bookstore downtown. Partially because I wanted to save more money, partially because I needed to get out of the house more. Martin hadn't been thrilled about it. "You're already working full-time at the dental office," he'd said, frowning. "You're going to exhaust yourself. And for what? Minimum wage at some bookstore." But I'd insisted, and he'd finally relented with a heavy sigh. "Fine. But if it becomes too much, I want you to quit. Your health is more important than a little extra money." Alina was the assistant manager at the bookstore, a woman in her early 30s with dark curly hair, warm brown eyes, and the kind of direct, no-nonsense energy that I found both intimidating and refreshing. She trained me during my first week, showing me how to use the register, how to organize the shelves, how to handle difficult customers. "You're good at this," she said after my third shift. "Calm, patient. That's rare." "Thank you," I said, surprised by the compliment. "You seem surprised," Elena observed, tilting her head. "Don't people tell you you're good at things?" I thought about it. Martin praised me sometimes. "Good job on dinner. That outfit looks nice. You're such a help around the house." But it was always in relation to him, to how I served his needs. When was the last time someone had noticed something about me? "Not really," I admitted. Elena's expression softened. "Well, they should. You want to grab coffee after your shift? There's a good place 2 doors down." I started to automatically calculate. I told Martin I'd be home by 6, and if I stopped for coffee, I'd be late, and he'd worry, and he'd text me multiple times, and "Sure," I heard myself say. "Coffee sounds great." That coffee turned into a friendship. Elena was easy to talk to, funny and sarcastic in a way that made me laugh more than I had in years. She told me about her life, her messy divorce at 29, her complicated relationship with her mother, her dream of opening her own bookstore someday. And slowly, carefully, I started telling her about mine. "So you live with your guardian?" she asked one afternoon during our break. We were sitting in the back room, sharing a bag of chips. "The guy who raised you after your parents died, Martin," I confirmed. "Yeah, I mean, it makes sense financially. Rent is expensive and—" "How old are you again?" Elena interrupted. 28. "And how long have you been living with him?" 16 years. Elena was quiet for a moment, her expression unreadable. "Do you want to live with him?" The question hit me like cold water. Want. I'd never thought about it in terms of want. It was just what made sense. What Martin said was practical. What I owed him after everything he'd done. "It's complicated," I said finally. "Becca, I'm not trying to pry. But you're a grown woman with a job. 2 jobs now. If you wanted your own place, you could have one. So either you don't want one, or something's stopping you. Which is it?" I didn't have an answer. Not one that made sense when I said it out loud. Elena dropped it, but I could tell she was filing the information away, and over the next few weeks she started asking more questions. Casual questions that felt like landmines. "Does Martin let you have friends over?" "Let me." He'd never said I couldn't. But somehow it had never happened. The house was his space, and bringing people into it felt like an intrusion. "Does he help you with bills? Like, does he show you the actual numbers, or does he just tell you what you owe?" I realized I'd never seen a utility bill. Martin handled all of that. I just gave him money each month. Whatever he said was my share. "When was the last time you did something just for yourself? Like something Martin didn't approve of or plan?" I couldn't remember. My 29th birthday fell on a Saturday. Elena had invited me to dinner with some of her friends. Nothing fancy, just pizza and drinks at a place downtown. I'd been excited about it all week, had even bought a new dress with money from my bookstore paychecks. But when I told Martin about the plans, his face fell. "Your birthday?" he said. "But I already made reservations at Marcello's. That Italian place you love. I was planning a surprise." Guilt crashed over me immediately. "Oh, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know. It was supposed to be a surprise." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "But if you'd rather go out with your new friends—" "No. I cancel. Will understand." "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel obligated." "I'm sure," I said quickly. "Marcello's sounds great. Thank you for planning that." He brightened immediately. "Good, I'm glad. I want your birthday to be special, Becca. You deserve that." I texted Alina to cancel, apologizing profusely. Her response was short. "Okay. Have fun. Dinner at Marcello's was nice. Martin ordered wine, even though I rarely drank, and toasted to another year of having you in my life." He'd gotten me a present, a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant. It's beautiful, I said, genuinely touched as I clasped it around my neck. I wanted you to have something that showed how much you mean to me, Martin said. You're not just my ward, Becca. You're family. You're everything. The way he said, everything, made my stomach twist, but I smiled and thanked him again. When we got home, Martin suggested we watch a movie. We sat on the couch together, and halfway through he put his arm around my shoulders. It wasn't unusual. We'd sat like this before. But tonight it felt different, heavier, more intentional. When the movie ended, I started to get up, but Martin caught my hand. Becca, wait. There's something I want to talk to you about. My heart started pounding. Something in his tone, in the way he was looking at me. You're 29 now, he said slowly. Almost 30. You're not a child anymore. Haven't been for a long time. I know, I said, confused. Martin, what? I've been thinking a lot lately about our future. Your future. And I realize that I've been holding back. Not saying things I should have said years ago, because I was worried about the timing, about how it would look. He was still holding my hand, his grip firm. But you're an adult now, Becca, and I think it's time we were honest about what this is, about what we are. What we are, I echoed. My voice sounded far away. You have to know, Martin said, leaning closer. You have to have felt it, the connection between us. It's more than guardian and ward. More than friendship. I've loved you since you were that broken little girl who needed me, and I've watched you grow into this beautiful, remarkable woman. And I think you feel the same way, don't you? I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. This couldn't be happening. Martin? I don't. It's okay to be nervous, he said softly. I know this is new. But we have time. We don't have to rush anything. I just needed you to know. Needed you to understand that what I feel for you, it's real, Becca. And I think deep down you feel it too. I pulled my hand away and stood up, my legs shaking. I need to go to bed, I'm tired. Of course, Martin said, standing as well. I didn't mean to overwhelm you. We'll talk more later. Sleep well, Becca. I practically ran to my room and locked the door behind me. Then I sat on the edge of my bed, shaking, the gold necklace suddenly feeling like a collar around my throat. You're not just my ward. You're everything. I've loved you since you were that broken little girl. I think you feel the same way. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and texted Elena, can we talk tomorrow? I need help. Her response came within seconds, my apartment. 10 a.m. I'll be there. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat in my locked room, listening to Martin move around the house, and finally understanding that I'd been living in a cage all along. Elena lived in a small apartment above a bakery on Maple Street, the kind of place that smelled like fresh bread and coffee every morning. When I knocked on her door at exactly 10 a.m., she opened it immediately, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. Sit, she ordered, pointing to her coffee. Strong coffee. And then you're going to tell me everything? I sat. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I'd barely slept, had spent the night replaying Martin's words over and over, trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding what he'd said, what he'd meant. Elena came back with 2 mugs and sat across from me in her armchair, her expression serious. Okay, talk. So I did. I told her about the birthday dinner, about Martin's confession, about the way he'd looked at me and touched my hand and said he'd loved me since I was 12 years old. The words came out in a rush, tripping over each other, and by the end I was crying. He said he's been holding back. I choked out. He said it's time we were honest about what we are. Elena, I'm not anything to him except someone he was supposed to take care of, someone he was supposed to protect. And now he's saying he's in love with me, that he's always been in love with me. Elena's face had gone very still, very pale. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, her coffee untouched. Becca, she said finally, her voice careful. I need to say something, and I need you to really hear me. What Martin is doing, what he's been doing, this isn't love. This is grooming. This is predatory behavior. He never touched me, I said quickly. Not like that. He never. Grooming isn't just physical, Elena interrupted. It's isolation. It's making you dependent. It's controlling every aspect of your life while making you feel grateful for it. Think about it, Becca. How many times has he sabotaged your relationships, your jobs, your chance to go to college? He was just being protective. He was isolating you, making sure you had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. And now that you're an adult, now that he can't justify the control anymore, he's trying to turn it into a relationship. He's trying to make you think this is normal, that you owe him this. I shook my head, even though something inside me was screaming that she was right. You don't understand. He gave up everything for me. His whole life. Did he? Alina leaned forward. Or did he get exactly what he wanted? A young girl he could shape and control, who'd be so grateful she'd never question him. Becca. Normal guardians don't fall in love with their wards. Normal guardians want you to grow up and be independent. They don't check your phone and monitor your friendships and make you live with them until you're almost 30. I could have left any time, I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Could you? Really, when every time you tried to do something on your own, he found a way to stop it. When he controlled your money, your information, your access to the outside world, Elena's voice softened. Becca, you're not stupid, you're not weak, you're trapped. And the worst part is, he's made you believe the cage is for your own good. I covered my face with my hands. Everything she was saying aligned with thoughts I'd been pushing down for years, questions I'd been too afraid to ask. How had I ended up here? How had 16 years passed without me ever really leaving? What do I do? I asked. My voice sounded very small. First, today. Right now. I can't just leave. All my things are just things. You can get them later with police escort if necessary. But Becca, he told you last night that he's in love with you. He's not going to drop this. He's going to push harder. And I don't think you're safe there anymore. Safe. The word sounded foreign. I'd spent 16 years believing Martin's house was the safest place in the world. I don't have anywhere to go, I said. You can stay here. My couch is yours for as long as you need it. I looked at her, this woman I'd known for less than 2 months, who was offering me what Martin had always claimed to provide: safety, shelter, help. But Alina wasn't asking for anything in return. Wasn't making me feel like I owed her my life. Why are you doing this? I asked. Because somebody should have done it years ago, Elena said quietly. And because I've been where you are. Different situation, but the same trap. My ex-husband. He isolated me. Controlled me, made me think I couldn't survive without him. It took me 3 years to leave. I'm not going to watch someone else go through that if I can help. I didn't go back to Martin's house that day. Alina helped me make a plan. We drove to the dental office where I worked, and I explained to my boss, Dr. Patterson, that I needed to change my emergency contact information and my direct deposit. He was kind about it, didn't ask too many questions. Then we went to the bank. That's where I discovered the first real evidence of what Alina had been saying. The trust fund from my parents, the one Martin always said was nearly depleted, still had over $80,000 in it. 80,000. Martin had been telling me for years that we were scraping by, that the money was almost gone, that I needed to be careful with every penny. He'd been lying. The bank officer, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, pulled up the account history and frowned. There have been regular withdrawals over the years, she said. But nothing excessive. This trust has actually been growing with interest. Who told you it was empty? My guardian, I said numbly. He manages my finances. Patricia's frown deepened. Does he? Because according to our records, you became the sole account holder on your 25th birthday. That's standard for trusts like this. No one else should have access without your explicit permission. I stared at her. I never signed anything. You didn't need to. The trust automatically transferred to you when you reached the age specified in your parents' will. Your guardian should have informed you of this 3 years ago. Elena, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. Can she change the account so that no one else has access? Add password protection. Absolutely. We can do that right now. We spent an hour at the bank, securing my accounts, setting up new passwords, making sure Martin couldn't touch a penny of my money. Patricia also gave me copies of all the account statements from the past 10 years. I'd look at them later, when I could breathe again. There's something else, Patricia said as we were leaving. Your parents also had a safety deposit box. It's listed under your name now. Would you like to access it? I'd had no idea the box existed. Inside, I found documents, my parents' original will, my birth certificate, their marriage license. And at the bottom, a sealed envelope addressed to Rebecca, On her 18th birthday. My mother's handwriting. I didn't open it there, I couldn't. I just clutched the envelope to my chest and thanked Patricia, and then Elena drove us back to her apartment. I called in sick to both jobs, the dental office and the bookstore. Then I sat on Elena's couch and finally opened my mother's letter. Dearest Becca, if you're reading this, it means your father and I are gone. I can't imagine what you must be feeling, what you must be going through. I wish I could be there to hold you, to tell you everything will be okay. By now you're 18, legally an adult. If Martin Caldwell has been your guardian, and I suspect he has, since Tom trusted him completely, then I hope he's been good to you. I hope he's helped you through the grief and the pain. I hope he's been the father figure we asked him to be. But Becca, I need you to know something. You are your own person. You don't owe anyone your life, your choices, or your future. Not even someone who helped raise you. Your father and I wanted you to be happy, to be free, to chase your dreams wherever they led. There's money in your trust. Enough for college, for a start in life, for building whatever future you want. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone make you feel like you have to stay small or safe or grateful. You are our daughter. You are strong and smart and capable of anything. And wherever you go, whatever you do, we are so proud of you. Live, big baby girl. Live free. That's all we ever wanted for you. All my love, forever and always, Mom. I read the letter 3 times. Tears streaming down my face. Elena sat beside me quietly, not saying anything, just being there. She knew. I finally said. She knew I'd need to hear this, that I'd need permission to leave. You never needed permission, Elena said gently. But I'm glad you have it. I spent that night on Elena's couch, my mother's letter tucked under my pillow. I didn't sleep well. I kept expecting to hear Martin's footsteps, his knock on the door, his voice asking where I was. My phone had been vibrating all day with his calls and texts. I'd been too afraid to look at them, but finally, around midnight, I made myself read them. Martin, 11:03 a.m. Becca, where are you? You didn't come home last night. I'm worried. Martin, 12:47 p.m. Please call me. I need to know you're safe. Martin, 2:15 p.m. Are you upset about what I said last night? We can talk about it. Please come home. Martin, 4:33 p.m. I've called your work. They said you called in sick. Why didn't you tell me? I could have taken care of you. Martin, 16:58 p.m. Z. Becca, this isn't funny. Where are you? Martin, 9:41 p.m. I love you. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, we can work through it. Just come home. The last text had come in 5 minutes ago. Martin, 11:56 p.m. See, you can't run from this. From us. You'll see that eventually. I'll be waiting when you're ready to talk. I blocked his number. Then I blocked him on social media, on email, everywhere I could think of. Elena had helped me set up a new email address that afternoon. One Martin didn't know about. You're doing the right thing, Elena said when I told her. She'd come out of her bedroom in pajamas, probably hearing me crying. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are. He's going to come looking for me, I said. Let him. He doesn't know where I live. And if he finds out... How? Elena sat down beside me. There are resources, Becca. Domestic violence shelters, legal aid, restraining orders. What he's doing, the control, the manipulation, the grooming, it's abuse. Even if he never hit you, it's still abuse. And there are people who can help. Abuse. The word felt too big, too dramatic for what I'd experienced. Martin had never hurt me. He'd taken care of me. He'd loved me. But he'd also isolated me, controlled me, lied to me. And now he wanted to own me in a way that made my skin crawl. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. One step at a time, Elena said. Tomorrow we make more calls. Figure out your legal options. Get you set up somewhere safe. But tonight you just rest. You're not alone anymore, Becca. Remember that. I nodded, even though I still felt terribly, achingly alone. But maybe I thought as I finally drifted off to sleep, maybe Elena was right. Maybe I didn't have to do this by myself. Maybe, for the first time in 16 years, I could ask for help. The next morning, I woke to Elena making breakfast. Scrambled eggs and toast, coffee strong enough to strip paint. She'd already made a list of phone numbers, legal aid societies, therapists who specialized in abuse. A detective she knew from her own divorce who might be able to help. We're going to get you through this, she said, handing me the list. But first, we eat. You need your strength. I was halfway through breakfast when my work phone rang. It was the dental office number. I answered it hesitantly. Becca. It was Dr. Patterson, my boss. Listen, I don't want to worry you, but there's a man here asking about you. Says he's your guardian. He's very insistent about knowing where you are. My blood ran cold. Don't tell him anything, I said. Please, I'm safe, I'm fine. But I don't want him to know where I am. There was a pause. Is everything okay? Should I call the police? No. Just tell him you don't know where I am. Tell him I called in sick and that's all you know. Okay. Dr. Patterson sounded concerned. Becca, if you need help. I'm getting help. Thank you, dotting help. Patterson. I hung up and looked at Alina. He's looking for me. Of course he is. You're his property in his mind. He's not going to let you go easily. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling my friend Sarah Chen. She's a detective. She helped me when I was leaving my ex. She'll know what to do. Detective Sarah Chen met us at a coffee shop that afternoon. She was in her mid-40s, with short black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Elena had briefed her over the phone, but she still wanted to hear everything from me. I told her. All of it. The isolation, the monitoring, the sabotaged relationships and blocked opportunities. The lies about money. The confession of love. The texts from last night. Detective Chen listened without interrupting, taking notes occasionally. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. First, I want you to know that you did the right thing by leaving, she said. Second, I want to be honest with you about what we're dealing with here. What Mr. Caldwell has done, the financial manipulation, the control, the grooming, it's all deeply wrong. But proving it legally is going to be complicated. My heart sank. So there's nothing I can do. I didn't say that. What I said is it's complicated. But here's what we can do. We can file for a restraining order based on his harassing behavior. We can report the financial irregularities. If he's been accessing your trust fund without permission, that's theft. We can document everything, build a case, and make sure he faces consequences. Will it be enough to keep him away from me? A restraining order should. If he violates it, he'll be arrested. But Becca, I need you to understand something. Men like Martin Caldwell don't just give up. He's invested 16 years in controlling you. He's not going to walk away because you asked nicely. This is going to be a fight. I thought about my mother's letter. Live big, baby girl. Live free. I'm ready to fight, I said. Detective Chen smiled. Good. Then let's get started. Detective Chen worked fast. Within 3 days, she'd helped me file for a restraining order and started an investigation into Martin's financial dealings with my trust fund. She also connected me with a lawyer named Margaret Sue, a woman in her 50s who specialized in cases involving financial exploitation and guardianship abuse. Your case is more common than you'd think, Margaret told me during our first meeting in her downtown office. Guardians who overstep their bounds, who see their wards as possessions rather than people they're meant to protect. The good news is, you have documentation. Bank records, those text messages, witnesses who can testify to his controlling behavior. Will it be enough? I asked. I'd been asking that question a lot lately. It should be. Especially combined with the restraining order. But Becca, I need you to be prepared for this to get ugly. Martin's going to fight back. He's going to try to paint himself as the devoted guardian, and you as the ungrateful child who abandoned him. He'll have friends, people from church, colleagues who'll vouch for him. Are you ready for that? I thought about the past 16 years. About every dream I'd given up, every relationship Martin had destroyed, every moment I'd made myself smaller to fit into his vision of what I should be. I'm ready, I said. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, I moved my few belongings, what little I'd been able to grab from Martin's house with a police escort, into Elena's apartment. It wasn't much: clothes, books, my laptop, some photos of my parents. Everything else was still at Martin's house, but Detective Chen advised me not to go back, even with police presence. Let's wait until after the hearing, she said. Once the restraining order is in place, we can arrange for you to collect your things safely. The police escort had been surreal. 2 officers had accompanied me to the house while Martin was at work. I'd had exactly 30 minutes to gather what I could. The house felt foreign, like a place I'd seen in a dream but never actually lived in. The pink bedroom, my room for 16 years, looked like a shrine to someone I used to be. Someone younger, more naive, more trapped. I'd taken what mattered and left everything else behind. Elena helped me set up a small corner of her living room with my things. It's not much. She apologized. It's perfect, I said. And I meant it. It was mine. For the first time in my adult life, I had a space that belonged to me, not because someone allowed it, but because I'd claimed it. Martin tried to reach me constantly. Even with his number blocked, he found ways. He called the dental office so many times that Dr. Patterson had to threaten him with a harassment complaint. He showed up at the bookstore, demanding to speak to me, until Elena's manager banned him from the premises. He sent emails to my old address, long rambling messages that swung between pleading and angry. Detective Chen printed them all out for evidence. "This is good for your case," she said, though her expression was grim. "It shows a pattern of obsessive behavior. But Becca, you need to be careful. Don't respond to him, don't engage, don't give him any opening. Men like this, when they feel like they're losing control, they escalate." "Escalate how?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "That depends on the person. Some get more aggressive. Some make threats. Some try to manipulate through other people, friends, family, anyone who might convince you to come back." She paused. "Has he tried to contact anyone close to you?" I thought about it. I didn't have many people close to me. That was part of the problem. Martin had made sure of that over the years. But there was Sarah, my one friend he'd tolerated. "There's Sarah," I said slowly. "We've been friends since high school. She lives across town now, but we still meet for coffee sometimes." "Has she called you recently?" I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Sarah, all from yesterday. And a voicemail I hadn't listened to yet. I played it on speaker so Detective Chen could hear. "Becca, it's Sarah. I ran into Martin at the grocery store, and he's really worried about you. He said you left without explaining, that you won't return his calls. He thinks maybe you're having some kind of breakdown. He asked me to reach out, to check on you. I don't know what's going on, but if you need to talk, I'm here. Call me back, okay?" Detective Chen and I exchanged a look. "That's the manipulation I was talking about," she said. "He's using your friend to get to you, making himself look like the concerned guardian, making you look unstable." My hands were shaking. Sarah was one of the few friends I had left. If Martin convinced her that I was the problem, that I was having a breakdown, "I should call her," I said. "Explain what's really happening. That's your choice. But be careful what you say. If Sarah's still in contact with Martin, anything you tell her might get back to him." I thought about Sarah. We'd been friends for 12 years, since junior year of high school. She'd been there through my failed relationships, through the quiet suffocation of living with Martin. But had she ever really questioned it? Had she ever wondered why I could never seem to leave? I called her back that evening, from Alana's apartment. My heart was pounding as the phone rang. "Becca," Sarah answered on the second ring. "Oh my God, I've been so worried," Martin said. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me," I interrupted. "Whatever Martin told you, it's not the whole story." There was a pause. "Okay, I'm listening." I took a deep breath and told her. Not everything. I didn't have the energy for everything, but enough. The control, the isolation, the lies about money. The confession that he'd been in love with me since I was 12. The text messages, the showing up at my work. When I finished, Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Becca," she finally said, her voice careful. "Are you sure you're not? I mean, Martin's always been a little overprotective, but he raised you. Maybe you're misinterpreting." "I'm not misinterpreting anything," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Sarah, he told me he's in love with me. He said he's been waiting for me to grow up so we could be together." That's not protection, that's grooming. But he never actually did anything, right? He never touched you. The question felt like a slap. He didn't have to touch me to abuse me. He controlled every aspect of my life for 16 years. He lied to me about money, sabotaged my relationships, isolated me from everyone. That's abuse, Sarah. Even if he never laid a hand on me. Another pause, longer this time. "I don't know, Becca. I've known Martin almost as long as I've known you. He's always been so devoted to you, so careful. I have a hard time believing he'd do something like that." My chest tightened. "So you think I'm lying?" No, I think maybe you're stressed. Maybe you need some time to think clearly. Martin mentioned that you've been working 2 jobs, that you seemed exhausted. Maybe you just need a break, and you're reading too much into things. Sarah, he filed false financial reports. He lied to me about my trust fund. I have bank statements proving it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he was trying to help you save money and just... I hung up. I couldn't listen anymore. Couldn't hear another person tell me that my reality wasn't real, that my fear wasn't justified, that Martin's devotion excused his control. Elena, who'd been sitting nearby pretending not to listen, came over and put a hand on my shoulder. She said quietly. "She doesn't believe me," I said. My voice sounded hollow. "She thinks I'm being dramatic. People believe what's comfortable. And it's more comfortable to believe Martin's a good guy than to accept that he's been abusing you for 16 years. Especially if accepting that means they should have noticed, should have helped. So I'm just supposed to accept that everyone's going to take his side. Not everyone. I believe you. Detective Chen believes you. Margaret believes you. And the court will believe you once they see the evidence." Elena squeezed my shoulder. "You don't need everyone, Becca. You just need enough." The restraining order hearing arrived on a grey Tuesday morning. Margaret had prepared me for what to expect. I'd have to tell my story in front of a judge, and Martin would be there to contest it. He'd have the right to defend himself, to question my claims. "Just stick to the facts," Margaret advised as we walked into the courthouse. "Don't let emotion take over, even though this is deeply emotional. Facts, documentation, and calm delivery. That's what wins these cases." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more like a conference room than the dramatic spaces I'd seen on TV. Martin was already there with his lawyer, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit. When Martin saw me, his face lit up with what looked like genuine relief. "Becca," he said, starting to stand. "Mr. Caldwell, please remain seated," the bailiff said firmly. Martin sat back down, but his eyes never left me. The look on his face was so familiar. Concerned, loving, hurt. The same look he'd given me 1,000 times when I'd disappointed him. The same look that had made me feel guilty for wanting anything beyond what he provided. But now, seeing it from across the room, I could see it for what it really was: possession. Control. The look of someone who believed he owned me and couldn't understand why I was trying to leave. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Judge Reynolds, called the hearing to order. Margaret presented our case first, my testimony, the bank records showing Martin's misrepresentation of my finances, the text messages showing his escalating harassment, statements from Dr. Patterson and Elena's manager about his attempts to track me down. I testified, my voice shaking but steady. I told the judge about the isolation, the monitored phone, the sabotaged relationships, about the confession on my birthday, the implication that I owed him not just gratitude but love, romance, a future as his wife. Martin's lawyer objected several times, calling my testimony speculation and emotional exaggeration. But Margaret was prepared. She had the documentation. The numbers didn't lie. When it was Martin's turn to speak, he stood with wounded dignity. "Your Honor, I don't know what's happened to Becca," he said. His voice was thick with emotion. "I raised her from age 12. I gave up my career opportunities, my social life, everything to make sure she had stability and love after her parents died. And now she's accusing me of abuse, of grooming. It's absurd. It's hurtful. And I think it's clear that she's been influenced by this new friend of hers." He gestured vaguely in Elena's direction. She was sitting in the gallery, her face impassive. "I admit, I may have been overprotective," Martin continued. "But that's because I love her. As a guardian. As family. Yes, I told her I had feelings for her. Feelings I shouldn't have expressed, I realize now. But I never acted on them. I never forced her to do anything. And I certainly never stole from her or controlled her the way she's claiming." His lawyer presented character witnesses, people from church, colleagues from his law firm, even Mrs. Henderson from the parish council. They all said the same thing: Martin Caldwell was a devoted guardian, a pillar of the community, a man who'd sacrificed everything for a child who wasn't even his own. It was convincing. I could see it working on the courtroom, could feel the doubt creeping in. Maybe I was being ungrateful. Maybe. "Sue, do you have rebuttal?" Judge Reynolds asked. Margaret stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to call attention to the financial records again. Mr. Caldwell claims he never controlled Ms. Morrison's finances, yet the bank statements clearly show he had access to her trust fund well past her 25th birthday, when legal control should have transferred to her. He made regular withdrawals that he characterized as living expenses. Yet Ms. Morrison was paying him rent during this same period. Where did that money go? Martin's lawyer started to respond, but Margaret continued. Additionally, we have evidence that Mr. Caldwell intercepted Ms. Morrison's mail, including college acceptance letters and job offers, preventing her from pursuing opportunities that would have allowed her to become independent. We have testimony from multiple sources about his harassment following Ms. Morrison's departure, and we have his own words in text messages, declaring his love for a woman he raised from childhood. Your Honor, this isn't about gratitude or misunderstanding. This is about a man who groomed a vulnerable child into a position where she believed she owed him her entire life. Judge Reynolds studied the documents in front of her for a long moment. Then she looked up at Martin, then at me. Mr. Caldwell, I'm going to be frank with you, she said. Whether or not you believe your intentions were pure, your behavior toward Ms. Morrison has been inappropriate at best and predatory at worst. The financial irregularities alone are cause for concern. Add to that the emotional manipulation, the isolation tactics, and your recent attempts to contact her against her wishes, and I have serious concerns about Ms. Morrison's safety. Martin opened his mouth to protest, but the judge held up a hand. I'm granting the restraining order. You are to have no contact with Ms. Morrison, no calls, no texts, no emails, no showing up at her place of work. You are to stay at least 500 feet away from her at all times. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Do you understand? Martin's face went pale, then red. She's making this all up. She's confused, Or Mr. Caldwell, do you understand the terms of this order? A long, tense silence. Then, quietly, yes. Your Honor. Good, this hearing is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Margaret shook my hand. You did great in there, and the restraining order is a good first step. But Becca, this isn't over. We still need to pursue the financial fraud charges, and that's going to take time. I know, I said. I felt exhausted, wrung out, but also something else. Something lighter. But at least now he can't come near me. He can't legally come near you, Margaret corrected. That doesn't mean he won't try. Keep documenting everything. If he contacts you in any way, report it immediately. Alina drove me back to her apartment. We didn't talk much during the drive. There didn't seem to be much to say. I'd won a battle, but the war felt far from over. That night, lying on Alina's couch, I pulled out my mother's letter and read it again. You don't owe anyone your life, your choices, or your future, not even someone who helped raise you. Live big, baby girl. Live free. I was trying, Mom, I thought. I was finally trying. The restraining order changed things, but not in the way I'd hoped. Martin couldn't contact me directly anymore, but that didn't stop him from finding other ways to make his presence known. 2 weeks after the hearing, flowers arrived at the bookstore. A massive bouquet of white roses. My mother's favorite flower, something Martin knew well. There was no card, no name, but I knew who'd sent them. Elena's manager, Tom, took one look at my face and threw them in the dumpster out back. You want me to call the police? He asked. He didn't sign his name, I said. There's no proof it was him. Becca, we both know it was him. I called Detective Chen anyway. She added it to the file she was building, but she was right. Without proof, there wasn't much we could do. Martin was smart. He knew how to push boundaries without technically breaking them. A week later, a donation was made to the church we used to attend together. $5,000 given in honor of Sarah and Thomas Morrison, beloved parents of Rebecca. The pastor called me personally to thank me for the generous gift and to ask if I'd like to come speak at the next service about my parents' legacy. I didn't make that donation, I told him. Oh, but it says here. It was Martin Caldwell. And Pastor Green, I need you to know that I have a restraining order against Martin. He's not supposed to contact me in any way, and this feels like an attempt to do exactly that. There was a long, uncomfortable pause. Rebecca, I'm sure Martin was just trying to honor your parents' memory. He's been a member of this congregation for 25 years. I can't imagine he'd. I hung up. Another person who didn't believe me. Another person who saw Martin's public face and refused to look deeper. But the donations and the flowers were just the beginning. Sarah called me 3 weeks after the restraining order hearing. I almost didn't answer, still stung from our last conversation, but something made me pick up. Becca, she said. No greeting, no small talk. Her voice was shaking. What is it? Martin came to my apartment last night. My blood ran cold. What? He showed up at like 10 p.m., said he needed to talk to someone who knew you both, someone who could help him understand what was happening. I let him in. God, Becca. I'm so sorry. I let him in. And he talked for 2 hours about how much he loves you, how he's been planning your future together since you turned 18, how he was just waiting for the right time to tell you. Sarah. Let me finish. He showed me things, Becca. A folder full of pictures of you. Not just normal photos, but hundreds of them. Pictures he took of you sleeping, pictures of you getting dressed that he must have taken through a crack in your door, pictures of you in the shower that he took through. Her voice broke. I don't know how. But Becca, he's been watching you. For years. And he talked about you like you were already his wife, like the wedding was just a formality. He had it all planned out. The venue, the date, even the honeymoon destination. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. I told him to leave, Sarah continued. I told him he needed help, that what he was saying wasn't normal. And Becca, the way he looked at me. I've never been scared of Martin before, but in that moment I was terrified. He said, if you really cared about Becca, you'd help me bring her home where she belongs. Then he left. But Becca, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't believe you. I should have believed you. It's okay, I said automatically, though it wasn't. None of this was okay. No, it's not. I let him make you sound crazy when you were telling the truth the whole time. And now I'm scared he's going to. I don't know what he's going to do, but Becca, you need to be careful. He's not stable. After I hung up with Sarah, I immediately called Detective Chen. She listened to everything Sarah had told me, her expression growing darker with each detail. The photographs are illegal, she said. That's voyeurism, possibly stalking. If Sarah is willing to testify about what she saw, we can add that to the charges against him. Can you ask her to come in and make a formal statement? Sarah came in the next day. She told Detective Chen everything. The photos, Martin's delusions about marriage, the veiled threat when she refused to help him. She also turned over her phone, which had a recording of part of the conversation. I started recording when I realized how creepy he was being, Sarah explained. I don't know what I thought. That maybe I'd need proof someday. On the recording, Martin's voice was eerily calm. Becca belongs with me. She's confused right now, being influenced by people who don't understand our bond. But she'll come back. She has to. We're meant to be together. I've known it since the day I first held her after her parents died. She was so small, so broken. And I thought, this is my purpose. This girl is my purpose. Everything I've done since then has been for her. For us, Detective Chen's face was grim as she listened. This is good evidence. Very good. We can use this to strengthen the restraining order, possibly pursue criminal charges for the surveillance. Mr. Caldwell is building his own case against himself. Will it be enough to stop him? I asked. She hesitated. It should be. But Becca, I'm going to be honest with you. Men like Martin, men who've built an entire fantasy around someone, they don't just give up because the law tells them to. You need to be vigilant, change your routines, be aware of your surroundings, don't go anywhere alone if you can help it. Margaret, my lawyer, filed additional charges based on Sarah's testimony and the recording. The court issued an amended restraining order with stricter terms. Martin's passport was flagged, so he couldn't leave the country. He was ordered to surrender any photographs he had of me and to stay at least 1,000 feet away at all times. But the legal wheels turned slowly, and in the meantime, I lived in a state of constant fear. I started looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. Every man in a dark coat made my heart race. Every car that seemed to be following me for more than a block sent me into a panic. Elena bought a security camera for her apartment entrance and made me promise to text her every time I left and arrived safely. This isn't living, I said to her one night. We were sitting in her living room, and I'd just checked the door locks for the 3rd time in an hour. I left Martin's house to be free, and now I'm more trapped than ever, just by fear instead of by him. It's temporary, Elena said. Once the charges go through, once he faces real consequences, this will get better. But I wasn't sure I believed her. Willis, my old therapist from when I was a teenager, reached out to me through the dental office. Dr. Patterson passed along her number with a note. She heard what was happening and wants to help if you need it. I called her that evening. Rebecca, Dr. Willis said warmly when she answered. I'm so glad you called. I heard through the grapevine about the restraining order, and I wanted you to know that I'm available if you need someone to talk to. Thank you, I said. My voice was thick. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that until she said it. I want you to know something, Dr. Willis continued. I saw signs back then. When you were a teenager. The way Martin monitored you, the way you seemed to shrink whenever you talked about disappointing him. But I convinced myself I was reading too much into it. That he was just being protective because of what you'd been through. I regret that now. I should have pushed harder, asked more questions. You couldn't have known, I said. Maybe not. But I'm a trained professional, and I missed it. Or I saw it and didn't act. Either way, I failed you, and I'm sorry for that. She paused. But Rebecca, I want you to know how proud I am of you. For leaving, for fighting back, for refusing to accept his version of reality. That takes incredible strength. We talked for over an hour. Willis helped me process the fear, the anger, the complicated grief of losing someone who'd been such a huge part of my life, even if that person had been hurting me. She also gave me tools for managing the anxiety, for reclaiming my sense of safety. You survived 16 years of subtle psychological manipulation, she told me. You are stronger than you know. Don't let him take that strength from you now. A month after Sarah's visit from Martin, Detective Chen called me with news. They'd executed a search warrant on Martin's house. Rebecca, you need to prepare yourself, she said. What we found was extensive. She sent me photos. Not of everything they'd found. Some of it's too disturbing, and I don't think you need to see it. But enough to make my skin crawl. Martin had converted his home office into what Detective Chen called a shrine. The walls were covered with photographs of me. Hundreds of them, from age 12 to present day. Some I'd known about, family photos and school pictures. But most I hadn't. Photos of me sleeping, eating, reading, getting dressed. Photos taken through windows, through cracked doors, from hiding places I'd never known existed. There were journals too. 17 of them, one for each year since my parents died. Martin had documented everything, what I wore each day, who I talked to, what I ate, what time I went to bed. He'd written long passages about his feelings for me, about how he was preparing me to be his wife, about how he was waiting patiently for me to mature enough to understand our destiny. In the most recent journal from this year, the entries had become darker, more obsessive, more angry. March 5th, and Fixie Becker came home late again from that bookstore job. She smelled like coffee and someone else's perfume. She's spending too much time with that woman, Elena. I don't trust her. She's putting ideas in Becca's head, making her think she needs independence. I need to find a way to separate them. April 3, I told Becca the truth tonight. Finally. After all these years of waiting, of being patient, I told her how I feel. And she ran. She actually ran away from me. But she'll come back. She has to. She has nowhere else to go. No one else who loves her the way I do. April Tundre, she's not answering my calls. I went to her work, but they wouldn't let me see her. That receptionist looked at me like I was a criminal. Don't they understand? Becca needs me. She's mine. She's always been mine. Detective Chen's voice was gentle when she explained what they'd found. This is more than enough for criminal charges. Stalking, voyeurism, harassment, possibly even attempted kidnapping given his stated intentions. Martin Caldwell is going to prison. Rebecca, he's not going to be able to hurt you anymore. I should have felt relieved, vindicated, safe. Instead, I just felt numb. This man had raised me, had been the only family I had for 16 years. And all that time, he'd been documenting me like a specimen, planning a future I'd never agreed to, believing I belonged to him. Detective Chen said. We found evidence that he'd been drugging you. My world tilted. What? Small doses of sedatives in your food and drinks, particularly in the last few years. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to keep you compliant, tired, less likely to push back. We found the medication in his bathroom, along with notes about dosages and effects. Rebecca, this wasn't just emotional manipulation. This was calculated, systematic abuse. That explained so much. The constant exhaustion I'd felt living in his house. The brain fog that made it hard to think clearly about my future. The way I'd always felt just a little too tired to fight back against his control. He'd been chemically sedating me. For years. I need to sit down, I said, even though I was already sitting. I know this is a lot to process. But Rebecca, this evidence means he's going away for a long time. You're going to be safe. Martin was arrested the next day at his law firm. The partners immediately put out a statement distancing themselves from him, calling his behavior abhorrent and unacceptable. The local news picked up the story. Local attorney arrested on stalking. Abuse charges related to former ward. My name was kept out of the press, but everyone in our church community knew. Some people reached out to offer support. Many more just disappeared, uncomfortable with the messiness of it all. Mrs. Henderson from the parish council called to say she was praying for both of us, that she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive Martin someday. I hung up on her too. Elena threw a small gathering at her apartment the night after Martin's arrest. Just a few people: Detective Chen, Margaret, Sarah, Tom from the bookstore. We ordered pizza and tried to celebrate, though it felt strange to celebrate the destruction of someone's life, even someone who'd tried to destroy mine. You did it, Sarah said, raising her glass of wine. You got away from him. We did it, I corrected, looking around at the faces of the people who'd helped me. I couldn't have done it alone. But even as I said it, even as we toasted to freedom and justice and new beginnings, part of me felt hollow. The man who'd raised me was going to prison. The only family I'd known for 16 years had been a lie. And I had to figure out how to build a life from scratch at age 29. With nothing but trauma and trust issues to show for the last half of my life. It gets better from here, Elena said softly, reading my expression. I promise. The hard part is over. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Martin's trial was set for 6 months away, but his lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. With the overwhelming evidence, the photographs, the journals, the drugs, the recordings, there was no defense that would hold up in court. He pleaded guilty to stalking, voyeurism, fraud, and administering drugs without consent. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. I didn't go to the sentencing hearing. Margaret represented me and read a victim impact statement I'd written, but I couldn't bring myself to sit in that courtroom and face him again. Detective Chen told me later that Martin had cried, had apologized, had said he never meant to hurt me. He still doesn't get it, Detective Chen said. He thinks this was about love gone wrong. He doesn't understand that what he did was never love at all. I was sitting in Elena's apartment when I got the news about the sentence. 8 years. It felt like too much and not enough at the same time. 8 years for stealing 16 years of my life. But it was over. Finally, definitively over. What are you going to do now? Elena asked me that night. We were sitting on her couch, sharing a pint of ice cream, the way we'd done so many times over the past few months. I don't know, I admitted. I've spent so long just surviving, just getting through each day. I don't know how to think about a future. Well, you can't live on my couch forever, Elena said with a gentle smile. Not that I mind. You're a great roommate, but you deserve your own space, your own life. She was right. I'd been in survival mode for months, but Martin was in prison now. The restraining order was permanent. I had access to my trust fund, had money I could use to build something new. I just had no idea what that something looked like. The first step was finding my own apartment. Elena helped me look, drove me to viewings, gave opinions on neighborhoods and layouts. After 2 weeks of searching, I found a small one-bedroom in a quiet building about 20 minutes from the bookstore. It had big windows, hardwood floors, and a kitchen that was mine and mine alone. It's perfect, I said, standing in the empty living room. Sunlight streamed through the windows, making patterns on the floor. It's a start, Elena said. Now we just need to fill it. We spent the next few weeks furniture shopping, carefully, thoughtfully, choosing pieces that I loved rather than pieces that were practical or expected. A blue velvet couch, because I'd always wanted one. A small dining table made of reclaimed wood. Bookshelves that I filled with novels I'd always meant to read but never had time for. Every choice felt revolutionary. Every decision I made without asking permission, without calculating how Martin would react, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Sarah helped me paint the bedroom a soft sage green. We worked in comfortable silence. Music playing from my phone, another small freedom, choosing my own music without worrying if Martin would approve. I'm really sorry, Sarah said suddenly, pausing with her paint roller, for not believing you at first, for making you feel like you were crazy. You apologized already, I said, multiple times. I know, but I need to say it again. I let you down when you needed someone. And I can't stop thinking about all the times I saw red flags and ignored them because it was easier than confronting the truth. I set down my paintbrush and looked at her. Sarah, you did come through when it mattered. You recorded that conversation. You testified. You helped build the case that put him away. That counts for something. Does it make up for the years I should have noticed? No, I said honestly. But it's a start, and right now I need people who are willing to start. I can't hold on to anger about the past when I'm trying to build a future. Sarah nodded, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of sage paint on her cheek. Then I'm here. For whatever you need. For as long as you need it. Dr. Willis had recommended a new therapist, someone who specialized in complex trauma and abuse recovery. Her name was Dr. Anya Patel, and she practiced out of a sunny office downtown with plants in every corner and artwork on the walls. Tell me about yourself, Rebecca, she said during our first session. Not about what happened to you, about who you are. I opened my mouth and realized I didn't have an answer. Who was I, outside of being Martin's ward? Outside of being a victim? Outside of survival mode? I don't know, I admitted. I used to think I knew before my parents died. I was good at art. I liked reading. I wanted to be a teacher. But that was when I was 12, and I don't know if any of that is still true. Then let's find out, Dr. Patel said. Over the next few weeks, I want you to try things. Random things. Things you've never done before, things you used to enjoy, things that seem interesting for no particular reason. We'll call it an exploration, no pressure, no judgment. Just trying. So I tried. I took a pottery class at the community center and discovered I was terrible at it, but loved the feel of clay between my fingers anyway. I joined a book club and met people who had no idea about my past, who just knew me as Becca who likes mysteries. I started running in the mornings, something I'd never done before, and found that the rhythm of my feet on pavement helped quiet my mind. I went back to church. Not the one Martin and I had attended, but a different one across town. I sat in the back row and cried through the entire service, not from sadness but from relief. I could be there without him. I could have faith without his interpretation of it. I adopted a cat from the local shelter, a scraggly orange tabby with one torn ear and a suspicious nature. The shelter volunteer said he'd been returned 3 times for being unfriendly. Perfect, I said. I'll take him. I named him Marmalade, and we spent the first 2 weeks eyeing each other warily from opposite sides of my apartment. But slowly, cautiously, he started to trust me. Started sleeping on the edge of my bed, then closer, then finally curled up against my side, purring so loud it vibrated through the mattress. We're both learning how to trust again, I told him, scratching behind his good ear. We'll figure it out together. 6 months after moving into my apartment, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and necessary. Real college, not community college. The state university, 20 minutes away, with a campus full of students and possibilities. I was 30 years old, a decade older than most of my classmates would be, but I didn't care. I declared a major in education. I was going to be a teacher, the dream I'd had when I was 12, before everything fell apart. Are you sure? Elena asked when I told her. That's a big commitment. 4 years of school while working. I'm sure, I said. Martin took 16 years from me. I'm not letting him take this too. The first day of classes, I sat in the back of the lecture hall in Introduction to Education, my notebook open, my hands shaking slightly. The professor, a woman in her 50s with grey, streaked hair and kind eyes, was talking about why we teach, about the responsibility of shaping young minds. You'll meet students who are struggling, she said. Students with trauma, with difficult home lives, with challenges you can't always see. And your job isn't to fix them. Your job is to see them. To create a space where they feel safe enough to learn, to grow, to become who they're meant to be. I thought about 12-year-old me, broken and grieving, being handed over to someone who saw me not as a person to protect, but as a possession to groom. I thought about all the teachers who'd never quite noticed, all the adults who'd looked at Martin's performance of devotion and never looked deeper. I raised my hand. What if we miss it? What if there's a student who's being hurt, and we don't see the signs? The professor looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then we do better. We learn, we improve. We make ourselves the kind of person students can trust with their truth. We can't save everyone, but we can try. And sometimes trying is enough. After class, she pulled me aside. That was a good question. Personal, I think, I said. Very personal. Then I'm glad you're here. We need teachers who understand what it's like to need saving, who won't miss the signs. As the months passed, I started to feel less like a victim and more like a person. Not the person I'd been before my parents died. That Becca was gone, lost to grief and time. But a new person built from pieces of who I'd been, who I'd survived becoming, and who I wanted to be. I got promoted to assistant manager at the bookstore. I made the dean's list my first semester. I went on a few dates, nothing serious, nothing that lasted. But it felt good to be wanted for who I was rather than molded into someone else's fantasy. I visited my parents' graves for the first time in years. Martin had always gone with me before, had controlled even that act of mourning, making it about his grief, his loss of his best friend. But now I went alone, on a crisp autumn afternoon, and sat on the grass between their headstones. I'm sorry it took so long, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry I let him keep me away from you, from myself. But I'm here now, I'm free now, and Mom, I'm living big, I'm living free, just like you wanted. I pulled out her letter, now worn soft from so many readings, and read it out loud. The words felt different now. Not like instructions I was struggling to follow, but like permission I'd finally accepted. You don't owe anyone your life, your choices, or your future. I know that now, I said. I finally know that. 2 years after Martin went to prison, I got a letter from him. It was forwarded through Margaret, who'd called to warn me before sending it. You don't have to read it, she said. You don't owe him anything, including your attention, but I wanted you to have the choice. I stared at the envelope for 3 days before opening it. When I finally did, my hands were steady. Dear Becca, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I know I hurt you. I've spent 2 years in here thinking about what I did, and I'm starting to understand that what I felt for you, what I thought was love, was something else. Something wrong. The therapist they make me see here says I objectified you, that I saw you as something to possess rather than someone to protect. I'm not sure I fully understand that yet, but I'm trying. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry for what I did. For taking your childhood, your choices, your freedom. For making you believe you owed me something you never owed anyone. Your mother would have been ashamed of me. Your father would have killed me if he'd known what I was doing to you in his name. They trusted me with their daughter, and I betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. I hope you're living the life you were meant to live. I hope you're happy. And I hope someday you can think of me without this much pain. I'm sorry, Becca, for everything. Martin and I read the letter twice, then put it back in the envelope. Then I did something that would have been impossible 2 years ago. I threw it away. Not out of anger. Not out of fear. But because I didn't need his apology to heal. I didn't need his understanding to move forward. His remorse, sincere or not, wasn't what gave me closure. I gave myself closure. By leaving, by fighting, by building a life that was wholly and completely mine. Did you read it? Elena asked when I met her for coffee the next day. Yeah. And nothing. It doesn't change anything. He's in prison where he belongs, and I'm out here living my life. That's all that matters. Elena smiled. Look at you, all grown up and emotionally healthy. Don't get ahead of yourself, I said with a laugh. I still check my locks 3 times before bed and have nightmares about him showing up at my door. But I'm working on it. Working on it is good enough, Elena said. Working on it is everything. 4 years after I left Martin's house, I stood in front of my own classroom for the first time as a certified teacher. It was a 3rd grade classroom in a public elementary school on the west side of town, bright with bulletin boards and small desks arranged in clusters. 23 students would be walking through that door in an hour, and I'd spent the entire summer preparing, planning, dreaming about this moment. I was 33 years old. Most of my fellow new teachers were fresh out of college at 22, but I didn't care. I'd earned this. Every paper I'd written, every exam I'd passed, every late night studying while working part-time at the bookstore. It had all led to this moment. Elena had helped me set up the classroom the week before. We'd hung inspirational posters, arranged books by reading level, created a cozy corner with pillows where students could go if they needed a quiet moment. On my desk, I'd placed a photo of my parents on my college graduation day. My father in his Yale sweatshirt, my mother laughing at something he'd said. I'd been 7 in the picture, gap-toothed and happy, with no idea what was coming. "They'd be so proud of you," Elena had said, looking at the photo. "I hope so," I'd replied. "I'm finally becoming the person I was supposed to be before everything got derailed." Now, standing alone in my classroom in the early morning quiet, I felt a wave of emotion so strong it nearly knocked me over. This was mine. This life, this career, this future. All of it was mine. Not because someone allowed it, not because I'd earned it through gratitude or obligation, but because I'd fought for it. Because I'd reclaimed it. The first student arrived at 80:15, a small girl with dark braids and nervous eyes. Her name was Sophie, and according to her file, she'd recently been placed with a foster family after being removed from an unsafe home. "Good morning, Sophie," I said, kneeling down to her level. "I'm so glad you're in my class. Would you like to pick out which desk you want to sit at?" She nodded, not quite meeting my eyes, and carefully chose a desk near the window. As other students filtered in, chattering and excited, Sophie remained quiet, watching everything with the wary alertness of someone who'd learned to be careful. I knew that look. I'd worn it myself for 16 years. During lunch on that first day, while the students were at recess, I made a note in my planning journal: pay special attention to Sophie. Make sure she knows this classroom is safe. This was why I'd become a teacher, not just to educate but to see, to notice, to be the adult I'd needed when I was young and trapped and had no one looking closely enough to help. The years had been kind to me in ways I was still learning to accept. I'd graduated college with honors. I'd made real friends, not just Alina, though she remained my closest confidant, but other people too. Study partners who became genuine friends, neighbors in my apartment building, fellow teachers at the school. I'd even tentatively started dating again. His name was James, and we'd met at a bookstore event 2 years earlier. He was a librarian at the public library downtown, quiet and thoughtful, with kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor. We'd been friends first, meeting for coffee and talking about books, and then slowly, carefully, it had become something more. James knew about Martin. I'd told him on our 4th date, unable to move forward without him understanding where I'd come from. I'd expected him to pull away, to decide I was too damaged, too complicated. Instead, he'd taken my hand and said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. And I want you to know, there's no rush here. We go at whatever pace feels right to you." That had been a year and a half ago. We'd moved slowly, deliberately, building trust brick by careful brick. James never pushed, never demanded more than I was ready to give. When I had nightmares and woke up panicking, he held me until my breathing calmed. When I needed space, he gave it without making me feel guilty. "You're teaching me how to love you," he'd said once. "And I'm grateful for that. It means you trust me enough to show me what you need." We weren't engaged, weren't living together, but there was an understanding between us. A future that felt possible without being suffocating. For the first time in my life, I was in a relationship where I felt like an equal partner, not a possession. 3 months into the school year, Sophie finally started to open up. It happened gradually, a comment here, a question there, a slowly building trust that reminded me so much of my journey with Marmalade, my cat who'd learned to trust again after being abandoned. One afternoon, Sophie stayed after class while the other students rushed out to catch their buses. She approached my desk hesitantly. "Morrison, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Sophie. What's on your mind?" "My foster mom says I'm safe now, that nobody's going to hurt me anymore. But how do I know that's true? How do I know she's not lying?" My heart broke and mended at the same time. I pulled over a chair and sat down so we were eye level. "That's a really good question," I said. "And it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not trust right away, even when people tell you you're safe. Trust takes time to build. How long? That's different for everyone. For some people it's quick. For others it takes years." I paused, choosing my words carefully. I had someone hurt me when I was young. Someone who was supposed to take care of me but didn't. And it took me a very long time to learn how to trust again. Sophie's eyes widened. "Really, you? Really? And you want to know what helped?" "What?" "Finding people who were patient with me, who let me be scared and didn't punish me for it, who showed me through their actions over and over again, that they were safe. I smiled at her. It sounds like your foster mom might be one of those people. But you get to decide that for yourself. Okay? Sophie nodded slowly. Okay, thanks, Ms. Morrison. As she left to catch her bus, I felt that same sense of purpose that had driven me to teaching. This was why I was here. To be the person who saw, who understood, who made space for healing. That evening, I met James for dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. Over pasta and wine, I told him about Sophie, about the conversation we'd had. You're really good at this, James said. Teaching, I mean, but also just seeing people, making them feel safe. I learned from experience, I said. The hard way, still. Not everyone who goes through trauma comes out the other side wanting to help others. Some people just want to survive. I spent 16 years just surviving, I said. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to live. Really live. James reached across the table and took my hand. You are. Every day you are later. As he walked me to my apartment, he asked, have you thought any more about what we talked about? About me maybe eventually moving in. We'd been discussing it for a few months, carefully, with lots of conversation about boundaries and space and making sure I didn't feel trapped. My apartment was mine, but James's lease was up in 3 months, and he'd asked if I might be ready to try living together. I have, I said. And I think I might be ready. But slowly. Like you move some things in over time, and if it's too much, we can adjust. Slowly works for me, James said. Whatever pace you need, Becca. Always. He kissed me goodnight at my door, then waited until I was safely inside before leaving, something he did every time, knowing that small gesture of protection made me feel cared for rather than controlled. Inside, Marmalade was waiting, meowing his displeasure at being left alone all evening. I fed him, changed into pajamas, and settled onto my blue velvet couch with a cup of tea and a book. This was my life, simple, quiet mine, and it was exactly what I'd fought for. 5 years after Martin went to prison, I received a notification that he was eligible for parole. Margaret called to explain the process, to prepare me for the possibility that he might be released early for good behavior. You have the right to attend the parole hearing and give a statement, Margaret said. Or you can submit a written statement if you don't want to be there in person. Or you can do nothing. That's also your right. I thought about it for a week. Part of me wanted to show up, to look him in the eye and tell him exactly what he'd stolen from me. Part of me wanted to submit a scathing written statement detailing every way he'd destroyed my trust, my innocence, my sense of safety. But in the end, I did something different. I wrote a statement, but it wasn't what I expected it would be. It wasn't angry or vengeful. It was simply true. To the parole board, my name is Rebecca Morrison, and I am the victim in the case against Martin Caldwell. I am writing to provide input on his parole application. 5 years ago, I learned that the man who raised me from age 12 had been grooming me for a romantic relationship since the day my parents died. He isolated me, controlled my finances, monitored my communications, sabotaged my relationships, and administered drugs to keep me compliant. He took photographs of me without my consent, including invasive images taken in private moments. He planned our wedding without my knowledge or agreement. The damage he did to me was profound. It took years of therapy to understand that what happened to me was abuse. It took even longer to rebuild a sense of self that wasn't defined by his control. But here's what I want you to know. I am not writing this to punish Martin Caldwell. I am writing this to tell you who I am now. I am a 3rd grade teacher. I have my own apartment, my own life, my own future. I have healthy relationships built on respect and equality. I have dreams again. Real dreams, not ones someone else prescribed for me. I have worked incredibly hard to build this life, and I will continue to build it regardless of whether Martin Caldwell is in prison or out. His freedom or lack thereof does not define my healing. However, I want to be clear. I do not believe Martin Caldwell has served adequate time for his crimes. 8 years for stealing 16 years of someone's life, for grooming a child, for systematic abuse that could have destroyed me. That does not feel proportional. But that is not my decision to make. That is yours. What I will say is this. If Martin Caldwell is released, I hope he has genuinely changed. I hope he has done the work to understand the magnitude of what he did. And I hope he never, ever does this to another person. As for me, I will continue living the life I've built. I will continue being free. That is my statement, respectfully. Rebecca Morrison. I submitted the statement, and then tried not to think about the hearing. Margaret called 2 weeks later with the news: parole denied. Martin would serve his full sentence. How do you feel? She asked. Relieved, I said, ready to stop thinking about him, ready to just live my life without this hanging over me. Then that's what you should do, Margaret said. You've done everything you needed to do, Becca. The rest is just living. On the 6-year anniversary of the day I left Martin's house, Elena threw a small party at her apartment. It had become our tradition, marking the day not as a trauma anniversary but as a freedom anniversary. Sarah was there, and James, and a few other close friends I'd made over the years. Dr. Patel, my therapist, had even stopped by briefly with a card that read, "Proud of you," doesn't begin to cover it. We ate cake and told stories, and at one point, to Becca, she said, "Who taught me that it's never too late to save yourself?" To Becca, everyone echoed. I felt my eyes well up. You guys? I couldn't have done this without all of you. Yes, you could have, Alina said firmly. You would have found a way. But I'm glad you didn't have to do it alone later. After everyone had left, James and I walked back to my apartment. Our apartment now, since he'd officially moved in 2 months earlier. Marmalade greeted us at the door, winding between our legs and purring. You okay? James asked, reading something in my expression. Yeah, I said. I'm just thinking about everything. About how different my life is now compared to 6 years ago. How I almost didn't leave. How I almost convinced myself that living in Martin's house was just how things had to be. But you did leave, James said, pulling me close. You saw what was happening, and you left. That took courage, Becca. It took Elena, I corrected. It took Detective Chen and Margaret and Sarah and everyone who believed me when I barely believed myself. It took all of that, James agreed. But mostly it took you. Being brave enough to accept help. Being strong enough to fight back. Being determined enough to build something new. I leaned into him, feeling safe in a way I'd never felt in Martin's house. This was what safety felt like. Not control disguised as protection, but genuine care that left room for autonomy. I'm happy, I said, realizing it as I said it. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I'm actually happy. Good, James said, kissing the top of my head. You deserve that. You deserve all of this. The next morning, a Sunday, I drove out to my parents' graves. I'd started visiting regularly, making up for all the years Martin had controlled even that small act of remembrance. I sat between their headstones, the autumn sun warm on my face. Hey Mom, hey Dad, I said. It's been a while. Life got busy in the best way. I updated them on everything. On Sophie and my other students, on James moving in, on the small herb garden I'd started on my balcony, on the book club I'd joined and the 5K I was training for, on all the ordinary, beautiful, free parts of my life. I read Mom's letter again last week, I said. The one you left for me. And I wanted you to know I'm doing it. I'm living big. I'm living free. It took me a long time to get here, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I let Martin keep me small for so long. But I'm here now, and I'm not going back. The wind rustled through the trees, and I imagined it was them, telling me they understood. Telling me they were proud. I miss you both every day, I said. I wonder sometimes who I would have been if you hadn't died. If Martin had never become my guardian. But I'm trying not to live in that what if. I'm trying to live in what is. And what is, it's pretty good. It's better than I ever thought it could be. I stood up, brushed grass off my jeans, and placed fresh flowers on both graves. My mother's favorite white roses, my father's favorite sunflowers. I love you, I said. Thank you for the letter, Mom. Thank you for giving me permission to leave. I don't know if I could have done it without knowing you'd approve. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I'd been thinking for months about writing down my story. Not for publication, not for anything public, but just to have it recorded. To see it all laid out in words, to understand my own journey. But sitting there, fingers on the keyboard, I realized I didn't need to write about the past anymore. I'd spent enough time there instead. I opened a new document and started writing something different, a letter to my future self. To the Becca who would exist 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Dear future Becca, I don't know who you are yet, but I hope you're still fighting to be free. I hope you're still choosing courage over comfort, truth over convenience, yourself over obligation. I hope you're still teaching, still helping kids like Sophie learn that they're safe. I hope you're still with James, or if not, that you're with someone who loves you the way you deserve. Freely, openly, without conditions. I hope you've forgiven yourself for the years you spent trapped, for not leaving sooner, for all the ways you made yourself small. I hope you understand that survival was enough, that you did the best you could with what you knew. Most of all, I hope you remember this. You saved yourself. With help, yes, but ultimately you were the one who chose to leave. You were the one who chose to fight. You were the one who chose to live. Keep choosing that. Keep choosing yourself. Keep living big and free. You earned it. Love present. Day back I saved the document, labeled it, for later, and closed my laptop. Then I walked into the living room where James was reading on the couch and Marmalade was sprawled across his lap. Room for one more? I asked. James smiled and shifted to make space. I curled up next to him, and Marmalade immediately relocated to lie across both of us, purring like an engine. This was my life, these quiet moments. This chosen family. This hard-won peace. Martin had tried to claim me as his wife, but he'd never owned me. Not really. Because the only person who got to decide what I was and what I could become was me. And I chose freedom, I chose myself. I chose this beautiful, ordinary, miraculous life. And I was never, ever giving it back.